The forms were double-sided. That is the first thing I want you to understand. The Vithani Passage Authority had printed their own branding across the top, a long stylized glyph that our interpreters rendered as safe crossing, and we had stapled our colony health certification to the back. 2 sheets, 1 staple. I signed 9,114 of them. I was the pediatric intake physician at Korath Colony in those years. The authority ran passage hulks through 9 of our frontier corridors, enormous slow vessels painted in pale green, and they offered free transit to children on our poverty-listed and orphan registers. The destination materials showed bright habitat domes, medical wards with human nurses, classrooms with windows. The authority's liaison officers spoke quietly and answered every question we put to them. They had correct documentation for every regulatory body that mattered. I checked. I am a thorough person. I have always been a thorough person. My job was to certify that each child was healthy enough to travel. I listened to small lungs. I checked small eyes for tracking and response. I noted heights and weights on standardized forms and wrote "fit for transit" in the appropriate box and dated and signed my name. I did this 9,114 times over the span of 11 months. The last corridor closed on a Tuesday. I remember it was a Tuesday because the colony's water recycler had been down since the weekend and the clinic taps were running brown, and I kept apologizing to the last group of children for not having clean water to offer them, and one of the girls told me not to worry, that there would be clean water where they were going. I did not learn what the passage delivery receipts said until 31 years later. PDR 001 through PDR 9114 were filed with the Galactic Compact as successful transit completions across 9 corridor segments. Each receipt was a single data line, an assigned intake number, a corridor designation, a delivery timestamp, and a destination node ID. The destination nodes were not habitat domes. They were Vithani labor processing installations, operating under the Compact's commercial infrastructure licensing framework. The authority's liaison documentation had been accurate in every measurable respect. The Compact's certification bodies had reviewed the filings and confirmed them in good order. The children had arrived. That part was true. They had simply not arrived where we were told they were going. 9,114 successful transit completions. The field for passenger names was blank on every receipt. The authority's intake processing did not require that field to be populated. It was an optional column. I was 53 years old when Fleet Admiral Kovan Sereth summoned me to Meridian Station and showed me the recovered PDRs. He said he was giving me the choice. He said there was a billet aboard ISN Callaway's Passage if I wanted it. Column 1, First Corridor, Ship's Surgeon. He said I did not owe anyone this. He said the commission would execute the operation whether I sailed or not. I told him I had signed 9,114 transit health forms and that I needed to be on the ship. He nodded. He did not say anything else about it. That is the kind of man Sarath is. The Enduring Commission assembled over 14 months in Heron Drydock, 810 warships in 9 columns of 90, 1 column per corridor. I watched them build from the observation gallery of the station's medical wing, between shifts. They were not fast ships. They were not built for elegance. They were broad-hulled, deep-keeled vessels with redundant drive systems and full atmospheric processing, capable of sustained operation in contested space for 16 months without resupply. The Commission's planners had calculated the operation would take 11 days. The ships were built for 16 months anyway. Sarath said that was the correct way to plan for something that was never going to be interrupted. We departed on the 31st anniversary of the last corridor closing. I do not know whose decision that was, but it was the right one. ISN Callaway's Passage led Column 1 into the Korath Corridor at 0600 station time. I was in the ship's forward observation bay because I had asked the duty officer if that would be acceptable, and he had said yes, without making anything of it. The corridor was the same as I remembered it from the colony side, a long sleeve of navigable space between 2 gravitational bodies, pale amber light from the nearer star bleeding along the port bulkhead. The Passage Authority had run their hulks through this exact sleeve for 11 months. I had stood on the colony dock and watched the green ships disappear into it, one after another, full of children. The first column's lead elements reached the Korath processing node at 11:43. I was in the medical bay by then. I had patients who needed tending. That is always true aboard a working vessel. I tended them. I heard the broadcast begin over the ship's open channel at 11:51. Fleet Admiral Sarath's office had assigned the reading to a junior comms officer, a young woman, I learned later, who had specifically requested the duty. She read from the authority's own compact filings. She read each PDR number first. Then she read the child's name, which our archivists had reconstructed over 7 years, from Korath Colony's own health records, school registers, and orphan authority ledgers. 7 years to rebuild what the authority had not considered worth recording. PDR 001, Tessavan, Raquel, age 7 at transit. PDR 002, Marin, Kala, age 9 at transit. She read at a pace that allowed the silence between names to settle. I kept my hands on my work. The bay had a speaker grill above the second bunk, and the names came through it clearly. I did not count them. I did not need to count them. I knew the number. The Korath node's command infrastructure fell at 12:09. I know this because the ship's status system registered a change in the corridor's background radiation profile, a brief spike, and then a long flatness where there had been operational signal traffic for 31 years. The node went quiet. The comms officer continued reading. The other 8 columns were moving through their corridors simultaneously. I learned the sequence afterward from the after-action summary, but on the day I knew only column 1's corridor, column 1's node, and the names coming through the speaker above bunk 2. There are things I want to say here that I am not going to say. I am a physician. I know what grief does to the body over 31 years. I know what it costs to carry a specific and particular guilt, the kind that has a number attached to it, a real countable number, that you were the last human to touch before it was absorbed into someone else's accounting system and filed as complete. I know what it feels like when the accounting is finally corrected. I am not going to describe any of that, because the correction is not about me. The 9th column closed the 9th corridor at 23:47 on the same day, 11 days ahead of schedule. The planners had built 16 months of margin, and the operation ran in 17 hours. All 9 Passage Authority hub installations and all 31 associated delivery nodes were recorded as dismantled and non-operational in the Commission's after-action filing with the Galactic Compact, submitted under the same compact licensing codes the Authority had used for its own filings. The Commission's summary document listed the operation's purpose as correction of PDR 001 through PDR 9114. The comms officer finished reading at 0041 the following morning. She read the last name, PDR 9414, a boy of 11 from the Korath Orphan Register whose file I still know by sight, because he was the last one I certified, the last form I signed on that Tuesday, and then she did not close the channel. The channel stayed open. I do not know if that was planned or if she simply did not reach for the control. Either way, it was correct. The silence that followed was not empty. It was the kind of silence that has a weight and a shape and does not need to be filled. I filed my medical logs from the operation the next morning. 41 patients seen over 17 hours, minor injuries, stress responses, 1 case of transit sickness. All returned to duty. I noted each of them in the record under their names, in the name field, which I have never in my life left blank. The Enduring Commission returned to Heron Dry Dock 18 days later. I stood the whole approach in the forward observation bay again. The corridor behind us was quiet and pale amber, and empty in a way it had not been for 31 years. I do not know what the Authority expected when they printed those forms. I do not know if they expected anything at all, or if we were simply a quantity in a column that did not require a name field to be populated. I have thought about this for a long time, and I have not arrived at an answer that changes what the number is. 9,114. Every one of them had a name. We made sure the galaxy knew it.